Now, this morning, we hear from a filmmaker behind a docuseries that's just become a major part of the Select Committee's work. You're seeing clips from it here. It includes interviews with then President Trump and his adult children before and after the assault on the Capitol. Now, you may recall that Ivanka Trump told the committee she accepted then Attorney General Bill Barr's statement that there was no widespread voter fraud in 2020. Well, take a look at this. She has a much different tone in this exclusive clip, which comes from 7 hours of interviews the committee is currently reviewing.
As the president has said, every single vote needs to be counted and needs to be heard. And he campaigned for the voiceless. And I think a lot of Americans feel very, very disenfranchised right now. And he wants to make sure that their voice is heard and not muted, and will continue to fight until every legal remedy is exhausted. And that's what he should do.
The January 6th panel met privately with the docuseries director, Alex Holder, for more than 2 hours yesterday.
CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell talked with Holder, his first interview after appearing before the committee.
It eventually had to end with something violent. Even if you look at the way the campaign was going on before, the idea of the election being something that was going to be irregular was already coming up during that time as well. So to me, January 6th doesn't happen by itself.
It was the culmination of what you had been hearing on the campaign trail, or even after the election.
Absolutely. To me, it wasn't surprising. And it's obviously awful to sort of say this, but in some ways it's like, I thought it would be even worse.
Why did you think it would be worse? What did you hear? What did you record?
If you're telling 75 million people that their election doesn't count, and they believe you're their president, and they voted for you, and you're saying that their election doesn't count, then what else is going to happen? You
interviewed the president twice after January 6th. Did he express any remorse?
I think that people will have to wait to see and find out the answer to that question. I promise I'm not trying to be cute. I just genuinely feel that people might have a different impression about his reaction than I might have.
What was staggering about what the former president said after January 6th?
I think what was staggering was that he essentially gave the reason why they were there without fully understanding that he was responsible for that reason.
You seem to be suggesting that even afterwards he doesn't accept any responsibility.
I think that would be a fair conclusion to what I just said, yes.
Well, Holder also told Norah that he had complete editorial control and that the Trump family did not give the documentary team any direction. When asked if the Trumps should be worried, Holder said, "We shall find out." CBS News legal contributor Rebecca Roiphe is joining us now to talk a little bit more about this. So, Rebecca, so we've got this filmmaker with this new information that the January 6th committee looks like they're interested in. They asked to speak with him privately. Do you think the information that he has gathered in his docuseries could carry weight in the investigation?
I definitely think it could carry weight. I'm not sure how much weight or whether it's as much weight as some of the other officials that we've heard from, but it's extremely important because part of any investigation and any potential prosecution is to get at what his state of mind is. And so we have his own words. I mean, anybody who is represented by a good defense attorney under these circumstances, the defense attorney would tell them, don't go on television, because anything that you say, it's not going to help you. It could only potentially hurt you. And so there's a lot of peril in it. And until we see the full tapes, we don't know what, but I think it will hold weight because it's, this is really revealing of what he thinks and how he's viewing all of this.
So when you say state of mind, are we talking about intent? Because there's all this evidence that indicates that many, many people told him that he lost the election. But I don't know how you prove whether or not he believed that. He should have believed it. He should have known. But how do we know whether or not he believed that?
Well, I mean, on a certain level, our criminal justice system is not built for people having delusions. It doesn't excuse delusions. So if I go steal my neighbor's car, and I say, well, I thought that car was mine. It's not an excuse. You can't do that. So in a certain level, it doesn't matter. However, these kinds of crimes are what's called specific intent crimes. So there is a little wiggle room, and there is a requirement that we actually prove his state of mind, that he's really willful, that he knew that something he was doing was wrong. So there is room, at least for a jury, to think, well, you know, maybe he really didn't know. So that's why each of these pieces of information are important. Every single time an official told him, it's like, you know, whatever, there were 60 court cases. That should have been enough. But then one after another, these officials parading into his office saying there's no basis, that is great evidence to show that he knew. And, you know, at a certain point, you can, in his own words, he says, I don't care. He pushes back and he says, you know, to I think it was Donahue who said to him, from the Justice Department, look, like, there is no fraud. And if you want us to say there is, you know, that's, you know, we can't reverse the election. He's like, oh, I don't want you to reverse the election. Just tell me there's no fraud. Like, essentially saying, I don't care what the truth is. Just give me what I want so I can do what I want right now.
That speaks to the former president's state of mind, but what about those who were willing to help him along in this journey? We also heard from testimony that some 5 sitting House Republicans have requested pardons. Maybe that's harmless, but what does that tell? Maybe it's obvious how challenging a situation they are now in, but what does that tell us about how they feel about their actions around this?
Right. Well, you know, again, there are 2 possible ways you look at it. I think the most obvious way is that that's consciousness of guilt. That's what we call it, which is they understand that they did something wrong and they want to be, you know, they want basically a get out of jail free card. I mean, how you would spin it if you were defending them is you would say, well, they were very worried about vindictive Democrats getting control and going after them in some kind of unfair, illegitimate way. So that would definitely be the spin that they would put on it. But
those words were in the letter, in fact, that we saw that was requesting these pardons. The Socialist Democrats are on a campaign, and so these guys may need more.
Right, and from the beginning, you know, if you remember back to Robert Mueller and his report, from the beginning, there's been this campaign to discredit any supposedly neutral investigation by anybody as being a Democratic-led hit job. And so, you know, obviously that's their playbook. The question is, how well does it work?
A huge portion of what we heard yesterday was about the president's plan to replace Jeffrey Rosen with Jeffrey Clark, right? To replace the current attorney general, acting attorney general, with another acting attorney general who would be willing to do what he wanted.
What did you say yesterday? One Jeff is as good as another, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, you know, except one's an environmental attorney who worked for the Justice Department and knows nothing about elections. In fact, there's, I think, a visitor's log or a call log where he's listed as the acting attorney general, Jeffrey Clark, before any of this has even happened. That being said, if he was successful in sort of yanking out one Jeffrey and putting in another one as his acting attorney general, would Jeffrey Clark have been able to carry out his plan?
Well, you know, I don't think there would have been time to conduct a full investigation where he would have credibility sort of suggesting that he really found massive fraud in the election. But certainly that letter would have gone out. It would have gone out to the state lawmakers to the extent that they were just looking for cover to do what the president said. Perhaps that would have worked. And, you know, then things would have played out much differently.
All right, Rebecca, always great discussing this with you. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.